Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Welcome to another episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they released. Today we are talking about Tape. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And a super, super special guest. I cannot believe that he agreed, because Podcast Like It's 1999 is one of the reasons I wanted to make a podcast like this, talking about niche movies like this, where, of course, when I first got to your podcast, it was the Blair Witch Project episode, which that's my favorite movie. And then I just got more and more into the B-sides, to the C-sides that you guys are talking about, and it just really made me fall back in love with movies. It's Phil Iscove from one half of Podcast Like It's 1999. How are you, sir?
I am good. I mean that's lovely to hear. I'm glad that we were able to make you fall back in love with movies. I don't really, that's a glowing endorsement. I hope that other people like it as much as you do.
Oh, I'm sure.
Everybody
that I've put onto it love it. So I
thank you.
Yeah. Bryden, what were you saying?
I will also say it's great to have a fellow Canadian on the show, right?
Yeah. I am. I'm from Toronto originally.
Excellent. Yeah, I was born in Toronto, so yeah, perfect.
I was just there for TIFF actually last week. So.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you see?
I saw The Fabelmans, Glass Onion, The Whale, and Sanctuary. And a friend of mine had a film called past and future guest Chandler LeBac had I Like Movies there as well, which is
that's really good.
Okay.
Nice.
I want to see that.
Which is fantastic. I mean, truly, they were all. I was very lucky. All good movies. I mean, some perhaps better than others, or more enjoyable than others. You know, The Whale's not really a movie that you can say you really enjoy, but it exists and it has very good performances.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, The Fabelmans, getting to see that, with Spielberg and everyone in attendance at the gala, and Glass Onion as well, was with the cast, and Ryan Johnson was really special.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't wait to see all of those. So you're saying you're not gonna have a party and have friends over to watch The Whale or something like that?
I'm saying that that's not going to happen. I mean, listen, I think that when it's released, it'll have, I imagine, a pretty divisive reaction from people. Aronofsky's not happy unless he's getting that sort of reaction out of people, it seems. But I mean, listen, it certainly seems like Brendan Fraser is going to be nominated, as he should be. It's just, I think it gets a little bit muddled in its themes and what it's trying to say, and how it's executed. Aronofsky, as we all know, is a very visceral, visual, somewhat horrific filmmaker. And there's, I do wonder whether or not there's something to be said for making a 300 or so pound man seem like he's in the middle of as though he's a monster from a horror movie. I think that there's just something a little bit grotesque about it, but that's again, Aronofsky wouldn't be happy unless he's eliciting some sort of reaction out of people. So he'll definitely get that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Certainly going to see it. I mean, we've covered Pi and Requiem on the pod already. And I even love Mother, which I know is also very polarizing, but I've been interested in seeing people's reactions for this one, because I know some Aronofsky stans who love it, and some who have defended him up until this one, and are like, no, okay, this is the one where it goes too far for me.
I don't know that I wouldn't say that for me personally. I think that it just the best way to put it. I think that it's actually a very open-hearted movie. It's very much a movie about a man who suffers from guilt from abandoning his wife and child, and it's very much about him trying to reconnect with his daughter. Sadie Sink is wonderful in it. I think that just fundamentally, it's at odds with some of the previous Aronofsky work. He's not a particularly emotional guy in that regard. To be that sort of quite frankly, sentimental is just not a word I would ever associate with him. So there's this kind of at odds with itself a little bit in terms of his usual, visual bravura mixed with horrific elements and sentimentality, and like it's a lot. It's just a lot of a movie. And I mean, I certainly I'm glad it exists. I don't think it'll be a movie I'll ever watch again. And Brendan Fraser is putting everything he's got on the screen, and you have to respect someone who sees an opportunity like this to be able to get back in people's good graces. So that's that's special.
He's gonna win a belated. This Oscar win is gonna be for Bedazzled, but that's fine.
It might be, or
Yeah.
Blast from the Past.
Oh,
or
hell
Dudley
yeah.
Do Right, quick.
Oh hell yeah!
Oh my God, Dudley Do Right.
Yeah.
An underappreciated '99 film, Dudley Do Right. If you
I
ask
need
me.
to rewatch it.
I
Especially
never
Kenny.
seen it.
Kenny was like, "Holy fuck, this movie!" I was like, "Dudley Do Right? You're gonna hitch your horse to this?"
It hits Kenny right in the solar plexus when it comes to how he loves to love something that that unexpected. Let's put it that way. And I was surprised too. I was like, wait a second, why did this? First of all, why does this movie exist? But also,
Well, yeah.
like, why did people? It's a crazy movie. I'm actually, truthfully, a fan too. So
Hell yeah. Speaking of unexpected, somebody said unexpected. I'm just gonna go with that. Tape
sure.
from 2001.
Well, interesting
Tape.
because The Whale is based on a play, right? And Tape is also a play adaptation, so it kind of like
Yes.
and
Yeah,
so is Chelsea
alright.
Wall. So yeah,
as is Chelsea Wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're good at segues. Anyways, Tape premiered at
Tape.
Sundance January 2001. It was at TIFF September 2001. It opened to 7 theaters November 2nd, 2001, and expanded to 35 theaters. Uma Thurman was nominated for Best Supporting Actress at the Indie Spirit Awards. This was a budget of $100,000, opening weekend $28,000, domestic gross of $490,000, and an overall gross of $515,000. Strap in for this. Top 5 films that weekend is Monsters Inc. Okay, The One, the new metal classic, The One. Domestic Disturbance, K-Pax, and 13 Ghosts. Oh, excuse me. Thur 13EN Ghosts.
Yeah. This movie, which I did see. I did not see it in the theater. If I'm being honest, I'm not sure it even got a theatrical release in Toronto. It might have, and if it did, it was very, very limited.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a very big Richard Linklater fan. Let me rephrase: the stuff of his that I love. The stuff of his that I don't love, I don't love. He's a spotty filmmaker. I think he just needs to do his own thing. He can't be in the studio system. I think the only studio film of his that works is School of Rock.
that's a great one.
Which is a great movie. But so I remember this coming out. I remember seeing it. I was at a video store at the time. This is like right in the September 11th corridor. Like this is not a great time to be in theaters, I imagine. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. The funny is the wrong word. September 11th didn't have, I imagine, a particularly detrimental effect on the actual theatrical experience because unlike something like COVID or
People wanted to escape. Yeah.
shootings, people could go to the theaters without feeling, scared. This is just not a movie that it was going to play under really any circumstances, I imagine. Like this was obviously a very small movie, but it's so Kenny and I did a Screen Drafts episode on hotel motel movies about a few months ago, and I watched Tape in preparation for that, thinking that it might make the 7. It just didn't make it for me, but. And I think part of it is, I'm curious as to what you guys think in terms of how well this film is aged. It's doing a very, very tricky dance, even for 2001, but 2022 maybe more so, in terms of like gender politics and date rape and what exactly that means. And, that sort of line that the movie's walking is tricky. But I think it does it pretty well, all things considered. Probably because ultimately Uma Thurman's character is empowered by the end of the film.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she walks away with the end
Yeah.
of it, definitely.
Yeah, that's probably why it works.
Mhm.
It's
That and the
also tricky
three of them are great. Yeah. Sorry.
yeah, I guess it's also tricky because she's able to say what really happened without us really knowing what happened.
Right.
She's able
Right.
to steal agency away from both of them in order to walk away triumphant,
Totally.
which is
Totally.
very thorny. Yeah, in some ways. But
Yeah, I mean it's a prickly movie. And I would argue that like Linklater doesn't generally traffic in subject matter like this.
No.
There's like the rare occasions where he gets kind of this bitter and angry. I feel like those are the times when he kind of doesn't work with audiences, like Suburbia and this,
Hell
and
yes.
Fast Food Nation too, which is like a weirdly angry movie. And then like I feel like those are the ones that
I don't know that film.
Fast Food Nation?
You mean Fast Food? Oh, Fast Food Nation. Sorry, I misheard you.
No,
Yes,
yeah,
Fast Food Nation.
that's the one where like he's like kind of like trying to make a big angry statement, and
I saw that.
yeah, it's. I mean, that movie's a little all over the place, but like it is interesting, just like as sort of a contrast to like a lot of his like sort of feel good movies and everything, or like movies that are like kind of like pleasant vibes. But yeah, I guess there's anger coursing through like Days of Confused, like where like people are like very hostile to each other, like paddling and everything. But it's yeah.
I mean, those three films that you mentioned, Days to Confuse, Fast Food Nation, and Suburbia, are all about um, teenage, early 20s ennui,
Yeah.
and which is obviously very much his lane. You know, I feel like Suburbia, also based on a play
Right.
by Eric Bogosian, um, is a more complex movie than Tape. I mean, Tape is essentially, I mean, it's very much a play, right? One set,
Yes.
one location, shot for basically nothing on digital in a way that I actually don't hate. There was
I
a
love
time
it.
when obviously digital was cost effective, but just looked like absolute dog shit.
Yeah, I love
And
it.
and this movie weirdly makes that work.
Yes.
Whereas there are films that I just can't get on board with that just look so bad. They just, I mean, we're going to talk about that again. Yeah, Chelsea Walls being a prime example of that.
yeah.
Again, like it was a weird time because I understood that directors were emboldened to snag a video camera, make a movie for around $100,000, and it must have been exciting to do that. And it freed them up to do films that they might not get to make otherwise. The problem, of course, being that the barrier of the visuals was so severe back in the day that it was just really hard to get people to get on board. I mean, like Time Code. Do you remember that fucking movie?
I need to watch it, but yeah.
Mike Figgis movie, I believe.
Mike
is with
Vegas.
that.
Yeah.
Again, there were just movies that were just like rubbing your face in just like dog shit visuals, hoping that you could like really, really lock into the thesis statement of their movies, and more times than not, they just weren't capable of doing so. But but I do think that like of the three films you mentioned, I would say Suburbia is my favorite.
Sure.
Yes.
Tape probably being a close second, and Fast Food Nation is his most muddled because it's very much as I'm sure everyone knows who's listening to this, but it's based on a book of nonfiction, so it's a little preachy, and it's a lot of like throwing facts at you, which is just not his. That's just not Linklater's thing. He should have just made a documentary based on it. Is really what he should have done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the best parts of that movie are like when the actors are able to kind of make the didactic stuff happen. Like Ethan Hawke is in that movie, and there's a scene where he is like, it's like basically him and Patricia Arquette like just talking about like college topic debates and everything, and it's like this is bad on the page, but like they are able to make the loosest of it like work, but it's like also very clear to see what he's doing with the script. So
100%. It's interesting because like I just rewatched. I bought Okja on Criterion, the 4K, which is a great movie, and looks gorgeous in 4K. Kind of says what Fast Food Nation wants to say infinitely better than Fast Food Nation possibly could.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's baked inside a fable, and it's, Bong just being a genius. But Fast Food Nation is just kind of a mess. And I'll tell you, the thing that stayed with me, which I imagine was the point, is the last thing in the movie, is that horrible sequence where you're seeing like fucking cows get slaughtered, and you're just like, I want out of this movie theater. So it's a rough ride. That movie's tough. This movie's not that. This movie's, I mean, it's interesting. Ethan Hawke, I'm going on a Ethan Hawke podcast, I guess in a few weeks, or maybe it's in January, I don't remember, but I'm going to go on to talk about Boyhood. And then I've been watching his documentary series on Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, which is on HBO Max, which is tremendous. He's one of those guys who he's also walking a very fine line, because I feel like sometimes he tips into full-on pretension, which we will obviously talk about.
Yeah.
I do feel like maybe it's because my indoctrination into Ethan Hawke was Reality Bites, and Troy Dyer as a character has so sort of like, I don't know how much acting was going on. Let's put it that way. Like, I feel like that was in a lot of ways Ethan Hawke at that time, right? And not to project too much onto his role, but it did feel like he is that guy, right? He's that guy who's read a million books, who loves to tell you he's read a million books, and he's written books, and he's like, he's an artist.
Yeah. I listened to his commentary for Chelsea Walls 1000%.
I can only imagine. I was not going to subject myself to that, but I do feel like he's had a pretty great resurgence, which I have to kind of, which is exciting, right? Like, I think First Reformed was one of those, like, people were like, holy fuck. And then, like,
that was my favorite male lead performance of that year. First Reformed is just incredible. Yeah,
it's crazy he didn't get nominated for it.
Yeah.
And then what's the Showtime thing that he did, the limited
Good Lord Bird? That's supposed to be really good.
Good Lord Bird, yeah. Which again, not nominated. So there's this weird, like, Ethan Hawke's blind spot that the industry has for him, which I think probably just has to do with the fact that, like, he was kind of heartthrobby kind of leading man thing that I just don't think that, I'm not sure what, he should have been nominated for both those performances, but he's really good in this. I mean, he's playing just, your classic fucking Linklater, shithead, but, like, that's kind of the thing. He's good.
He's so good.
I think he mentioned that it was his first, quote, adult role. I think he said.
Interesting. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah,
which
is
right.
Yeah. I met Ethan Hawke very briefly because I work at the Coolidge Corner Theater, as I've mentioned a few times on this podcast. Just the sweetest guy. Just so delightful. He had come in to screen Blaze, which came out a few years ago, and we were all just, like, on a break eating Thai food, and he was just like, so this is where the party's at, and we were all like, like, oh, Jesus. And
motherfucker, you were in Snow Falling on Cedars. That's wild.
Yeah. And leave
another 99 masterpiece right there.
Yeah.
And I got my friend into the screening of Blaze that he had, and Liv Ullmann came to the screening of it, and my friend was sitting directly in front of her, like, just one row, and then Ethan Hawke and Liv Ullmann were having this tender moment, and she was just like, I have no idea what to do right now. I feel like I'm in the middle of something I should not, like, this is so intimate and pure that I feel like I can't even, like, process this right now. And then apparently, after he left the theater, he went into one of our offices and called Richard Linklater and said, you will not believe who was at my movie tonight, which was so sweet.
That's kicks ass.
Yeah. And I was talking to my roommate last night after having just watched Chelsea Walls, and, don't care for that movie, which bummed me out, but he said, you know what Ethan Hawke reminds me of? Like, a more pure-hearted James Franco in certain ways. Like,
oh my god!
In, like, that he had, like, similar, like, pretentious, like, aspirations, but, like, Ethan Hawke always feels sincere in a way, and is always aware of his limitations, whereas James Franco's just a piece of shit who thinks he can adapt Faulkner and all this stuff. Like, I don't know.
I think that I don't disagree. I think
that's what all my roommate said in terms of, like, yeah, which I thought was very funny, and it was just like, oh, I can see that, like.
I do think that, I mean, it's an interesting comparison. I mean, obviously there's just pretty significant age difference between Ethan Hawke and James Franco, and I think that, like, Ethan Hawke never fully became like the thing about James Franco is that he's just always been a good-looking guy. And he knows he's a
Yeah.
good-looking guy, and even from the jump, if you want to look at like Freaks and Geeks in '99, or then ultimately
Mm.
Spider-Man a few years after that, which really kind of puts him on the map. He's just he kind of drinks his own Kool-Aid, just sort of just who
Oh
he is.
yeah.
I think that Ethan Hawke is probably pretentious than James Franco in terms of I guess they both fucking write novels. They both think
I
that
don't
they're
know.
like
He didn't.
whatever. I mean, they're both pretty douchey
I
in their
mean,
own way.
Ethan Hawke did an adaptation of Hamlet, but never tried to pretend like what he was doing was like this big, important, grandiose thing. And like when it came out,
Hmm.
I would say he was more like. I mean, he's given interviews now where he's like, "Yeah, it was just my take on it, and I was kind of hurt when it came out, but you move on." Whereas James Franco, I feel like, is trying to. I don't know. It was also my roommate's comparison that I'm now just trying to process out loud, so I'm just
Sure.
thinking about it. Yeah, like I always get a sense of purity and open heartedness from Ethan Hawke's work of trying to be an artist in sort of similar auteuristic ways that but yeah, he never really seems to like drink his Kool-Aid. He's just like, I produced this and I wanted to share this with the world, and whether or not they like it or not, James Franco's always looking for some sense of acclaim or
Right.
approval that yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that. There was a really good piece that the AV Club published a few years ago by Alexander Halls, who talked about how good an actor Ethan Hawke was, not just like in like general, but like also like how he like really commits to like genre work. Like even if it's something like silly like Sinister or Daybreakers, the vampire movie, he always seems like he's
Oh
just like
yeah.
giving his 100%, like performing in the movie. Whereas like I know Franco, some people really criticize. I mean, he's criticized for many things, but like he is also criticized for his performances. How like in some of the bigger budget movies, how he just like doesn't seem to want to be there. Like that's like a thing that where he seems kind of like he's outside the material or like feeling like he's above it. Whereas Hawke does not. I feel like that's a criticism I see less with Hawke. Whereas like that guy just like
Hawke is generous. Hawke is generous to me, whereas Franco never knows how to share ever.
I'll
Sorry to
say
interrupt.
this. No. I do think that the other thing that should be said is that Franco, uh, like has kind of like two lanes or three lanes, if you will. Like there's the full on broad comedy lane, and then there's like
Hmm.
I'm doing something serious lane, and then there's like the stuff he does to get paid. I mean,
Hmm.
you don't have to look any further than Oz the Great and Powerful to just be like, he clearly just took a paycheck and he's just so fucking sleepwalking through that movie. But
Oh
like,
yeah.
but then, you see him in 127 hours and like, it's a really good performance. It is his best
He's very
performance, I
good
would
in it.
argue.
Yeah.
And he really shows up. I think with Ethan Hawke, though, if I'm being completely frank, I don't know that the big paycheck movies like ever really came knocking. Like I don't know that there was ever like a giant tentpole
Yeah.
movie that was necessarily like we really want Ethan Hawke, and that's not a slight against him. But I do feel like you see him in Moon Knight, which is such a fucking weird show. I didn't even finish it, but like I do think that like he's excited to be playing in that sandbox, and whether or not those
Hmm.
opportunities came before and he turned them down, or I don't know. Did you guys? I don't know if you saw. I think it was a few months ago. He had a thing on Criterion where he was interviewed. They do their adventures in
Yeah,
filmmaking or
yeah,
whatever thing,
yeah.
and he talked for like I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, just sort of about like his path, his career to some degree or another, and like what kind of gets him excited about filmmaking and what. And he's again like in his older age, I feel like he has, that prickliness, that shitty, I'm hot shit, young guy bravado has rounded off a little bit. And he
Oh
does
yeah.
now have a bit of a dad energy that I
Mm-hmm.
think is working for
Hmm.
him. And I think that that's part of why I think people are kind of he's ingratiated himself a little bit more with people over the last, 5 to 10 years. And now like with Maya, her career taking off too, I feel like in a weird way, that's kind of buoyed him a little bit too.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I think that
Hmm.
that's all interesting. I mean, the thing about his performance in Tape ultimately is that like he doesn't seem like a shithead at first. You don't
No.
really understand what his motives are, and then by the end you're really kind of unclear as to between him and Robert Sean Leonard, who's actually like the bad guy in that equation, because we'll
Hmm.
ultimately probably never really know what transpired between him and Uma Thurman back in the day, which I respect about the movie. I think that, like, listen, I think that most plays traffic in this type of material, where there isn't sort of clear cut answers to people's moral questions and choices. And I think that that's what makes theater so great, and why movies like this don't make money. I mean,
Well, yeah.
not to be blunt about it, but it's, people go to the movies more times than not because they want to be told something, right? They don't want to be challenged. They don't really want to have to think very much. They want it to be laid out for them, and then they leave the theater feeling better about their lives, which isn't an unreasonable thing to expect from art. But that's why movies like this that are complicated and messy and are exciting.
The choice to respect people is actually a good one, despite people like you who insist on calling fat people fat to their faces.
What if they are fat?
Yeah! You get stranger every year. Clear! Where's Lan?
We broke up.
Tell me what happened.
Oh, I get stranger every year. You know who's out here?
Who?
Amy.
You still feel bad about Amy Randall?
Admit it. What even makes you think I did something? Because I know.
Does anybody else know what happened?
I didn't tell anyone.
I highly doubt that she even remembers it.
Listen, John, you really should get going. She's only a couple minutes away.
How could you do something like that?
It offends you?
It offends me immensely. My apologizing now won't make any difference to her.
John,
Hey, Amy.
What are you doing here?
I'm an assistant district attorney.
You basically prosecute criminals?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad you're not fat.
Is that right?
I highly doubt if I wasn't one of your oldest friends, I would even possess the power to make you think twice. That's assuming you are thinking twice.
Where did you get this whole self-righteous thing? It's really not like you to have a spine.
I don't want there to be a communication gap. Tell me again what happened.
Do you not think that something happened?
Of course, something happened.
Don't be an idiot. They will arrest you.
It's never too late to one-up your best friend. That's very good.
You picked the most important weekend of my life to bring up something I haven't even thought about in 10 years.
So what did you do?
Can you please just tell me the truth?
I am.
Why does it have to be like this?
I'm not a very moral guy, John.
No, you just want the last word, and you know what? It's not yours to have.
Quick initial thoughts. I mean, yeah, I saw this 5-6 years ago and was just completely fucking blown away by it. And rewatching it today, I still love it. Love the way it's shot. Ethan Hawke is, in the commentary on tape, he was just like, I don't think I'll ever get a role better than this. Which maybe not. I don't know. But
I mean, First Reformed's a pretty good role.
Yeah, First Reformed.
Good word, Bird. Pretty good role.
Yeah.
And honestly, his work with Linklater, that's like where he gets like some of his best work. Like it's
absolutely. Yeah.
Him and Before Midnight is pretty unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean all the Before movies. I mean,
Well, yes, of course. But yeah, I'm always a fan, one, of just really dialogue heavy movies, and also set in one night and real time, blah blah blah. So this scratches all of that at once, and yeah, just the waves that Ethan Hawke's character goes, where you're on his side, not on his side, and then you're just like, I don't fucking know anymore. And then Robert Sean Leonard is really just fucking phenomenal in this. Once Uma Thurman shows up and her expressions, being that I'd seen this before, I was definitely watching her before they start talking about the actual incident, and she's just so standoffish about him, and it's just really weird. And yeah, she's also phenomenal. But Bryden, quick initial thoughts?
Yeah, this was a gap in Linklater's filmography that I had never seen before. It's got kind of a mixed reputation. I feel like some people who are even fans of Linklater kind of are down on this one. But I really liked it a lot. It's interesting. I have not read or seen the play that this is based on, but I feel like it's a really good adaptation in the sense that like Linklater still finds ways with like the limited location, and just like the minimal number of actors like to make this movie cinematic and everything. Where like the ways that like he's able to like enhance the claustrophobia and everything, where it's like whip panning between Robert Sean Leonard and Ethan Hawke when like they're like really like verbally sparring with each other, or like the violent, like the way that like Ethan Hawke like stabs like the knife into like the beer when he's like shotgunning it, like there's a really like kind of aggressive, violent energy to the way that this film was just like cut together. And yeah, like the performances are all like pitch perfect. I mean, Ethan Hawke, like the way he's like so deceptively laid back at the start, but then like just like in a moment he will just like reveal like his true intentions and everything, where he'll be like, like attacking people and everything, and like boxing them in. And then Robert Sean Leonard just like the perfect like condescending asshole and everything, where he's like, just like constantly like waving his hands away and everything like that. So like he's just like, oh come on, like this isn't that bad and everything. Like the way he's like so flippant about like his own like denial in this whole thing. And then Uma Thurman, yeah, like you said, Kevin, the facial expressions she has near the movie. I mean, the way that she is like kind of like nervously laughing about everything, and then like when Ethan Hawke finally like gets the courage to like ask about like what they're there for, like the way like her face is just sort of frozen in disgust is just like so chilling and everything, because it just like places you in her headspace and everything. And yeah, no, and the movie's subject matter, like the perspective could be seen as a bit questionable, yes, like from like especially because it is so male centered. But then of course I think that's the point of the movie, and then the fact that it doesn't really give them any kind of the male characters who are any kind of satisfaction near the end, and leaves them like just like so pitiful, like like at the end where like they're just like so pathetic. I mean that I think is, and yes, giving Thurman like the last, not necessarily the last word in the movie, but like the last full sentence, and like and then like snuffing out any sense of like any possibility of redemption for the male characters. I think that like really helps the movie. And then the needle drop at the end is just like the perfect like sort of knife twist note to end this movie on. It's just a perfect cherry on top. Yeah, so I really like this one a lot.
I would say real quick that the line that Uma is talking to Ethan Hawke about, like, why did you do this? I did this for you. No, you did this for you, is pretty much, that can kind of answer all of the gender problems of it all. It's just like these guys really think, one of them really thinks that he's either convinced himself something's happened, the other one is trying to help Uma Thurman, but really he's just trying to make himself feel better that she didn't sleep with him, and this is a revenge on both of them because he doesn't care about either of them.
Yeah.
Charlie, quick initial thoughts?
Yeah, mirroring both of you. I watched this for the first time weirdly in lockdown, which is a weird time to watch this movie for the first time.
Sure.
I agree with you all about, I like the digital photography that motel really does. It makes the motel feel as grimy and claustrophobic, and I don't want to be anywhere in this room at all times, but it's so perfectly fitting the tone and honestly everything thematically. I think the performances are all great. It's a very provocative, queasy, dicey movie that I definitely think, because of the way Uma Thurman's character takes control in the end, makes it absolutely worth watching. It's not something like Oleana, for example, which I have not read the play or seen the play on stage, but I've seen the movie, and David Mamet's a piece of shit, but I think he can be a really talented filmmaker if incredibly problematic, especially considering who he is revealed himself to be ever since Trump took office. Jesus Christ. But like that movie explored similar themes, and it just made me feel gross in a way that was just like, no, I think David Mamet, this is more not as even-handed as you think it is, and ultimately I think your problems with these politics are questionable and problematic at best. So yeah, I like this one a lot. It's also fascinating to me, Phil, like you mentioned earlier, I'm also in the same boat where I don't love everything Linklater's made, but the stuff I love, I really love.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that it's sandwiched in between two of his movies that I do love, that all three of them are different, because Waking Life came out earlier this year, which is so colorful and bright and wondrous and just very dialogue driven, all about dream logic, and could not be more separate than this, which is so grounded in reality, and so it's a dirty movie, and then on top of that, School of Rock came out 2 years later and was his biggest mainstream hit, and that movie is just like, I watched that in lockdown, and it like cured my depression for 2 days. So like, and
he uses that to get Before Sunset made.
Yeah,
Wow.
Before Sunset, one of his best movies. I adore the Before trilogy. It's also, I'm thinking about, because we mentioned earlier that like when it comes to adults, he does kind of have a tendency to get angry and a little I don't want to say uglier, but like I remember a lot of people when Before Midnight came out didn't like it as much as the first two because there's that whole extensive argument that Ethan Hawke
That's fucking
and
phenomenal.
Julie
That's the
Delpy
reason I
have.
love it.
Oh, it's the reason I love it too, but I remember even my parents were just like, you don't say that to someone you love, like stuff like that, where they were just so upset by the movie, and I'm like, but it feels real and raw and honest, and I think there is something about that like if you were to watch Everybody Wants Some, which is a film I know a lot of people love. I'm more like I'm positive on it, but didn't love it.
Well, that
I
one.
think a lot of people could walk away from Linklater with a certain aspect of like what his mentality is on like gender dynamics in a certain way. But then you watch something like this, and you're just like, oh no, it's just like he's dealing with a certain particular age group and then analyzing gender dynamics in a certain way. I mean, and I think that the other thing that is fascinating and also very upsetting watching this movie in a post-Me Too world is just knowing about this time around, especially because the first time I was just like, I don't know where this is going and I'm in for the ride. I could not help but think about Uma Thurman's performance and what we know now about what happened with Weinstein and why that performance worked so much of me. I was like, how much of this is like actual rage being projected into this movie and how much of it is sort of, you know, it really, you know, it really haunted me this time around, knowing what we know now about how Weinstein totally sabotaged her career and what he did to her. And yeah, it's a powerful film that still I don't think everything is squeaky clean, but it's not supposed to be. So, and that's what gives it its power. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that I mean, he's got a weird career, and I do feel like he's just had a lot of ups and downs, and the ups tend to be on his own accord, and the downs tend to be things that perhaps he felt like this is the smart movie for me to make.
Right.
I should make the Zac Efron Orson Welles movie.
Ooh, not good.
I should, you know what I mean?
I haven't seen that one. Yeah.
You know, I should make the Newton Boys. Like again, like these aren't like unwatchably bad movies. They're just they just don't make sense from him. I mean, say what you will about Everybody
Yeah.
Wants Some. It was a passion project of his. He wanted to make a spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused in a lot of ways, and it is. But again, like, you know, he keeps sort of cashing these blank checks that he gets off of sort of other blank checks in a weird way. Like Boyhood's a big hit, which gives him the opportunity to make Everybody Wants Some. You know, and then Everybody Wants Some does pretty well, and then he weirdly decides to do Where'd You Go, Bernadette, of all movies.
Well, no, he does it after he does Last Flag Flying, which also doesn't hit very well.
Another movie that you're just like, why did he make this movie as well?
I do like that movie, but yeah, it does not hit at all.
It's not bad,
Yeah.
but yeah,
It's not bad, but
it's not him.
Last Flag Flying, if I'm being completely honest, is one of those like, on paper I get it, right? It's like, oh, you want to make a sequel to Five Easy Pieces with these enormously talented older actors, sure, but like Linklater's not the guy to do that. Like, there's so many other filmmakers that make more sense in that movie or to make that movie. Like, the reality is that Linklater is at his best when he is making small, intimate movies of people fucking talking, period.
Yep.
Like, that's kind of it. And the reason Boyhood's such a masterpiece is that he did that, but he, like, you know, he just sort of expanded it and into the scope of a lifetime, right? Like, he basically just was like, I'm going to do what I do, but I'm just going to shoot it in increments, and I'm going to show, like, it's such a simple thing, right? Like, he didn't use any special effects. He just fucking checked in with the same kid every couple years. Like, it's the most sort of like Linklater-esque thing to do. And I would argue, I don't know what the fuck this Merrily All Along or whatever the fucking thing that he's doing now, which is also using the same technique. Who knows? Maybe that movie will be great. I don't know. Who knows? But I have full faith in him. I will always check out what he's doing next. But yeah, just weird. Where'd You Go, Bernadette was the weirdest choice and a weird ass movie. that like everything about it makes no sense to me. And I love all the players. Like,
Yeah.
I love the book. I think Kate Blanchett's obviously one of the best actors around. I love Linklater. I think oh my God, the guys that did the original draft before Linklater did it, Newsteader and Weber,
Oh,
are I like a lot of their work. Like all the pieces were there, and then you sit in the theater just like, what the fuck am I watching?
Three great tastes that don't taste great together. Yeah.
Right. But all this is to say that, like, when you look at Tape, which is such a sort of, you said this best earlier about like Waking Life and Tape coming out in the same year is like such a 1-2 punch from Linklater of like
Mhm.
lo-fi, high-minded ideas and just kitchen sink stuff. And like that's when he's at his best. Like I think Waking Life is weirdly slept on. Like it's a movie
It's
that I
good.
keep waiting for fucking film Twitter to be like, wait a second, everybody, Waking Life's a fucking masterpiece. What have you been doing?
Well, I don't think it's really on streaming, and the only Blu-ray is the Arrow Blu-ray, which is Region B, so maybe it just needs a little push or something like that.
I think it might be on
Yeah.
Disney Plus here in Canada because it's a Fox.
Is
I
it?
think because it's a Fox movie. I think so. Like
Oh, right,
that's
right, right.
that's how we get like a lot of the properties through. Yeah.
That to me is that's a prime Criterion thing, right? Like Criterion
yeah.
should just fucking
Yeah.
buy Waking Life and just like go all out and give it what it's due. Because I remember seeing it in the theater, in '01, and just being like, what is this? Like just not fully getting it at the time. Because
It's a fever dream. Yeah.
It's it's such a fucking like get high and watch Waking Life thing. Like clearly it's for potheads.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Say the two guys that are vaping while we're recording.
Not weed. Not weed.
Not weed.
No judgment.
Not weed.
No judgment. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that movie gets made. I imagine the budget on Waking Life is real low. It's all what's the fucking technology when you draw over it? Why am I drawing?
Rotoscope?
Yeah.
Rotoscoping.
Rotoscoping. And it's like great. It's I mean maybe the best rotoscoping I've ever seen. I mean, I Scanner Darkly is another fucking
Yeah,
weirdo
it's up
Linklater movie.
Waking Life budget of $2 million, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah. But what was the budget on Scanner Darkly, out of curiosity? Because like Scanner Darkly was another one of those like
$8.7 million.
Okay, that's a slept on Linklater film. That's a better movie than people give credence to.
Yes.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his last rotoscoping movie, the new one, Apollo 10.5, is actually pretty good too. I know some people are kind of. That's the one that's like kind of ambling, but like it works. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. There's kind of no one really doing what he's doing, but it's also like he needs to hit like a bullseye in order for it to like really connect, and even then it's tough.
Yeah. Quick trivia from the commentary.
Please.
There's a few good stuff. There's Linklater said that everybody was just like, wow, you just got like 2 cameras and went into a hotel. He's like, motherfucker, we made the set. Like, but thanks, because apparently it looks real.
It did look real. I never questioned that.
Yeah, it did look real.
Yeah. They rehearsed for a week and shot it in 6 days, which is just beautiful. Shot on 2 consumer model Sony cameras. Linklater was interested in shooting on early HD, but he said that only 2 prototype cameras were out, and George Lucas had one, which I assume is what he shot Attack of the Clones on, and Wim Wenders had the other.
Wow.
Like I said, the budget was $100,000, produced by Indig Int, which also produced Chelsea Walls for the same amount. And their philosophy that Hawk says in the Chelsea Walls commentary is that we're going to give 10 directors $100,000, shoot it on DV, whatever. And they also did that with Pieces of April and Tadpole and Personal Velocity, a bunch of other DV shot movies. So pretty pretty stuff that they were doing. But apparently they went out of business after they were just like they were like, we went out of business after we tried to do the Charlotte's Web Paramount movie. It was just like, how did from tape to sure, okay. And then lastly, Ethan Hawke had a really funny line where he says, he's on the commentary, he's like, here's my character doing a celebratory line of coke, which reminds me that I was nominated for Best Actor by High Times, and I always thought that was funny.
The notion of giving 10 filmmakers $100,000 and like go off and make a movie is an interesting idea.
But
maybe not the most fiscally responsible thing in the world to do. Like I do wonder if, because you're quote unquote spending so little money, whether or not you're kicking the tires hard enough on set ideas. But
right.
I mean,
Yeah, it's interesting in practice, and that there was a company like 20 years ago. It's like, yeah, sure, we'll burn the place down. Who cares? At least we'll have Chelsea Walls to look forward to. After
people
that.
really like Pieces of April. I remember seeing Tadpole and not hating it, but again, long time ago. Don't know how it holds up. And I don't think I ever saw Personal Velocity.
I did see it. It's pretty good.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's got a lot of. It's got Parker Posey, A Men Who Reward, Kira Sedgwick, and Faruqa Bulk, I believe. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. It's Tadpole. I haven't seen. I've heard middling things about it, but it's shot on TV, so I have to.
Oh,
watch
and that makes sense actually, because Gary Winnick, who did that, and 13 Going on 30, he's producer on tape, so that makes sense.
Oh wow!
that
okay.
makes sense. That's awesome.
There
That
we
makes
go.
total sense.
Quick rundown of the plot. As we've said, it all takes place in a hotel. There is Vince, played by Ethan Hawke. He's a drug dealer and a volunteer firefighter, which whenever he tells Amy he's a firefighter and doesn't say volunteer, and Robert Sean Leonard laughs, which is really good. But Robert Sean Leonard is in town because he has a movie premiering. He's a documentary filmmaker, and they're reminiscent about it, and it's very happy, and you can definitely... Their chemistry is fucking phenomenal because, you know, they've been friends for like 15 years. So all of that reads so well. But then...
I mean, they met on Dead Poets Society, right?
Yep. Yeah. And they're reminiscing their happy times, but then it's just how the barbs start to grow, where it's just like Robert Sean Leonard says one thing and then Ethan Hawke will laugh it off, but then the next time it'll be a little bit more heavier, and then it eventually just explodes to whenever they do get on the topic of Amy, Vince's former girlfriend that Robert Sean Leonard had slept with after they broke up, and then it gets a little bit more heated, and then we learned that perhaps maybe he assaulted her back in the day, and he gets it on tape, and then Ethan Hawke's performance when he has that tape and he feels so vindicated is chilling but so fucking funny at the same time, because he acts like a little kid that got away with something. Like I said, we said this about Chuck and Buck with the DV cams. It's just it makes it feel so claustrophobic, and you get so close to actors more so than you could on film and whatnot. And when you use it not as a crutch as far budget, because Linklater was also talking about this, like how just because you're shooting on DV doesn't mean you can like slouch on things. So it's like somebody like him, this is like his 8th or 9th movie or whatnot. It's just like he's gonna still bring everything he has, but a lot of DV movies that's definitely just like, oh, we can make a movie and we don't know how to make movies. But the intimacy that comes with the video camera is pretty good stuff. Vince becomes obsessed with and tries to get a confession out of John, aka Robert Sean Leonard. He tapes it, blah, blah, blah. And then he reveals that he already invited Amy to come over because she actually lives here and she's a DA. She comes over. Once this happens, even though I love the two-part dynamic and whatnot, once it becomes a three-hander is when it's at the best when it's this, because you have... There's a great shot when it's just Robert Sean Leonard and Uma Thurman going back and forth, and it's doing the whip pans and whatnot. And Ethan Hawke is like a scorned child in the literal corner of the room, just like he'll say things. It'd be like, "Can you shut the fuck up?" It's so great. But she eventually, it's you. This, I mean, yeah, this is the dicey part because it's very hard to tell, because we only have this this dialogue to know what actually did happen, and then she'll say something where you feel like she is stating that it did happen, but then we'll immediately shut it down, where it's just like, oh, you think you did that because you had your hand over my mouth? And he's just like, yeah. And he was like, well, I let everybody do that. And you're just like, there's so much going on where she is having just as much fun playing with him that he thinks something happened, but maybe it did. Regardless, those scenes.
There's a lot of mindfuckery going on for sure.
So much. Yeah.
And, like, no matter... Like, the thing is with, like, the Robert Sean Leonard character is that, like, no matter whether or not he did it, he still sucks, because like it's the thing of like, if he did it,
Oh, yes.
he's a terrible person, and if he didn't do it, then like it's even more, it's just as fucked up, because it's like, well, why are you like, it's almost like he's bragging or something like that about it, and then like, you know, and like also he just like handles it in like the most condescending way. It's like, I don't think I should leave because you're not processing this in the right way. It's like it's like he's just like projecting his own, like Hawk. They're both like projecting this sort of like image on like her as like this helpless person who just like has no agency, and then she's like able to take charge at the end of the movie, and like is always able to take charge. But yeah.
She also decides to go over to this shitty fucking motel. Like,
True.
Why? What are, you know, and then it's questioning what her true motivations are. Like, if this actually did happen, did she have this motive all along to fuck with them? Or if nothing happened and then she actually genuinely was like, why are we here? And then, these two men are fighting over me as if I'm an object and rewriting history and stuff like that. No, fuck you. I'm gonna fuck you up now. Like, it's all, but again, yeah, like, I think that is what makes it so thought-provoking. If, you know, it deals with icky subject matter that is very, you know, I can understand people not wanting to sit through this because of that, but it also feels very raw and very honest in a lot of ways, and it's stuff like this is never easy or completely clean cut, I should say. Yeah.
Well, subject matter aside, it's already tough to watch because it's just so intense, and the awkwardness grows to like 10th degree whenever she shows up, because you know they're eventually going to get to it, but you just wish they didn't, because the eventuality of it finally shows up and you're just like, oh god, get me out of here. Ethan Hawke is just doing so much in these scenes. Anytime he shouts, it's still funny, even when he's being serious, where he's just shouting, well, you two just hurry the fuck up and figure out what you're supposed to be talking about.
Yep.
It's so good. And when he has to, because eventually it concludes with her calling the DA and saying that Ethan Hawke's character has a large amount of illicit drugs, and that Robert Sean Leonard's character, look into him because 10 years ago you should have a confirmed case of SAS. And then it's back and forth of, am I going to leave? Are you going to come with me? And then Robert Sean Leonard says the thing of, you know, if this is how she processes it, then I'll stay. And it's just like, you're a dick to the end. But Ethan Hawke is trying to go back and forth. You should come with me, man. Come with me. And then slams the door and just screams and starts flushing all of his drugs. And then he goes, wait. Did you actually call them? And she's like, no. And he's like, you are evil.
Yeah, and then he has the great line, she says, like, he's like, you don't know how expensive those drugs were. And she's like, there'll be other drugs. He's like, yeah, but I really liked those ones. And you just like, and like, Hawk, I mean, whenever his voice like goes like sort of like so scratchy and high, he just like sounds like so weak and everything throughout this whole thing. And yeah, it's the little kick that he does like when he's like, you know, skipping around, like trying to like get like just flailing about and everything. He just like looks so ineffectual, like trying to do it.
Totally.
Also, the complete lack of self-awareness when he eventually says, "You are so fucked up." It's like, dude, you set the stage, man. Like, deal with the fucking consequences, you asshole. Like,
I know. But yeah, then it leaves with Robert Sean Leonard just sitting down and Ethan Hawke sitting on the floor after he just flushed all this stuff, and then she's just like, oh, well, I'll see you later. And then, of course, that fantastic needle drop. So, and the best part about it, you know what the best part? 86 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Just like a perfect
beautiful.
Gotta love a short movie.
Yeah.
But final thoughts, what do we have on tape? Where do y'all, I mean, we kind of did talk about it, so if we have any final thoughts, let us know. But
well, we don't have it on tape because we're recording on computers.
Oh, brother!
Okay. But
I mean, I think I do think it's a really great film. People should check it out if they can find it. I know it was up on Criterion Channel for a bit there.
It still is.
Still is.
Yeah, for a little while. If it still is, that's great. You know, there's DVDs that you can use, DVDs or what have you that you can buy. It's a somewhat tricky film to find, but highly recommend people search it out.
Yeah, I would say favorite Linklater. It's between this, maybe Before Sunset, and Suburbia. I'll just count all the befores as one, but I fucking this is
Yeah, I
truly
mean
my
the
shit.
before trilogy is I mean that and Boyhood and Dazed and Confused. I mean those are sort of untouchables
Yeah.
in my
Oh, yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
He has other great films that I really enjoy. I think School of Rock is unquestionably his most successful studio effort. It's just kind of all the things are clicking. Mike White's script is great. Jack Black is just at his most perfect Jack Black, and but unfortunately he's got a lot of things on there too that are just sort of like, let's just call them misguided efforts. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at Kev Bonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at J Doyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CT Nash91. Once again, thank you for listening.